Darius III was the last ruler of the Achaemenid Empire, an ancient Iranian empire. He was also the biggest coward in history. But before we can delve into such cowardice, we should probably build some background about the cowardice so that we can better understand the extent of his cowardice. As stated before, the Achaemenid Empire was an ancient Persian/Iranian empire located in the modern-day Middle East. It was founded in the mid-550s BC by a dude named Cyrus II, more commonly known as Cyrus the Great. Cyrus the Great was born to some other guy named Cambyses I, who, at the time, was the king of an Iranian empire called Medes. Cyrus eventually ascended upon his father's throne. However, your boy Cyrus wasn't content with just being the king of one empire. The mad lad wanted more. And so, long story short, Cyrus II the Great set out to conquering Asia Minor and the Neo-Babylonian Empire. After both of those were under his control, he brought them all together and called it the Achaemenid Empire. Obviously, I skimped on some details, but that's the gist of his contributions. The next important guy was Darius the Great. His main deal was that he brought the Achaemenid Empire to a more centralized government, with a better system of roads, language, and a uniform currency. He ruled the empire, the largest at its time, at its height, and expanded its influence. Darius III was king of the Achaemenid Empire for a whole whopping 6 years. Before even ascending, his empire was doomed. His satraps were really greedy and unreliable, and his subjects weren't particularly happy with Achaemenid rule. Historians say that he lacked any passion or knowledge of how to do his job well, with no overwhelming leadership qualities to help him pull together his empire. Darius III's first mistake was made in 334 BC, when Alexander the Great first invaded Asia Minor. He remained at his home in the capital and let his satraps deal with it. He had no reason to believe that Alexander meant to conquer the entirety of Asia. Darius III the Cowardly didn't actually go on to fight Alexander until 333 BC, at the Battle of Issus. The man had the advantage of numbers, with almost double the units as Alexander's army. He also had surprised Alexander and his army. However, Darius didn't think that Alexander would dare to flank him on the left. The man saw Alexander's chariot slash through his unprepared forces, and with a horrified look of fear and resignation on Darius' face, he fled. He fled so hard that he left his chariot attire and bow on the ground, just waiting for Alexander to pick them up, like an 8th grader waiting outside of the movie theater. In fact, Darius fled so fast that Alexander was able to seize Darius' headquarters and take his family prisoner. This wasn't a strategic retreat. Oh no, honey, this was a coward's retreat. Then came the 331 BC Battle of the Battle of Guatemala. He had literally every advantage. He had more troops. He had experienced commanders. For heaven's sakes, the ground wasn't tilted one tiny bit so he could use his scythe chariots. And still, the man fled before anything, really happened. Sure, people were fighting, but nothing definitive had been done yet. And so, he fled once more, leaving his commanders and Persian troops to be massacred by Alexander's army. He fled to a nearby city called Ecbatana and attempted to raise an army there. While staying there, Alexander continued conquering his empire and scorched the Persian capital, Persepolis, in 330 BC. However, Alexander hadn't had enough just yet. He could have easily declared victory over the Persians after capturing their capital. However, the man wanted to capture Darius. Darius eventually heard of Alexander's march to Ecbatana, the city he was staying in after the Battle of Gaugamela, and debated his next action. He decided on marching through the mountains to Bactria, a place where he could better use the forces he gathered in the city. His army was constantly strained with the thought of a surprise attack by Alexander, and most of them deserted. Finally, one day, his cousin Bessus, who was a satrap, staged a coup against Darius. Him and his co-conspirators tied him up in an ox cart and ordered the Persian forces to march on. One of Alexander's soldiers eventually found Darius, dead in said wagon. It was at this point that Alexander took the dead king's royal ring. And so, giving Darius III a magnificent burial in the Persian capital, Alexander became ruler of the Persian Empire. All thanks to the biggest coward in history. One grain of salt to be taken with this story. They say history is written by the victor, and that could be totally true in this case. Perhaps the events told by Greek historians were stretched and hyperbolized to make Alexander the Great look even cooler. And we may never know.